From isolated cabins in the woods to haunted castles and mansions, here are 16 of the creepiest abandoned houses. Number 16, Cabin in the Woods. You'll find these Spartan cabins in the ghost town of Garnet, Montana. In the 1860s, it was a small mining town, and workers called these small cabins their home. For a time, plenty of gold was yielded from the motherlode, but when the gold ran out in 1918, so did the populace. Nowadays, the well-preserved ghost town receives around 16,000 visitors a year. Maybe you'd like to visit the creepy-looking cabins for yourself. Number 15, Home Alone. At some point in time, this shack served as someone's home, and maybe it still does, who knows? But we're betting this decayed domicile has been effectively abandoned for a while now. Just look at how the branches and vines seem to be pulling it into the ground. There's a lot about this picture that gives off bad vibes. Can you come up with a backstory for this strange looking place? If so, let us know in the comments. Number 14, Vampire's Retreat. This is a manor house located in Romania, or the remains of one anyway. As you might know, Romania is known for a forest area called Transylvania, which borders on the Carpathian Mountains. And Transylvania is known for Vlad the Impaler, also known as Vlad Dracula, and said to be the inspiration for the legendary vampire. With those windows covered up, it would be the perfect hideaway for an undead creature of the night. What do you think? Number 13, the Psycho House. This one probably needs no introduction. It's a place that Norman Bates and his mum once called home. Immortalised in Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 film Psycho, its former name is actually the Bates Mansion. After being abandoned by filmmakers, the house became a popular attraction at the Universal Studios backlot in Hollywood. And although it's been altered and moved several times, the house still remains an icon of creepiness, so it's worthy of our list. If the Bates Motel was full, would you be willing to sleep in the house? Number 12, the Cullerton Villa. While no ghosts are associated with this place, there is a haunting story that goes with it. In 1894, a wealthy businessman named William O. Wyckoff had this large edifice built on Holland Island in Cape Vincent, New York. He intended to use it as a summer residence, but a month before they moved in, his wife died, and Wyckoff himself passed away on his very first night in the mansion. It eventually fell into despair after the family lost their fortune during the Great Depression. Located near the Canadian border, this crumbling castle has stood abandoned for more than 70 years. Did you know that this property is on the market and listed at $495,000? But realtors advise that bringing the house back to life will take upwards of $12 million, making it an epic fixer-upper. There's a scary thought. Number 11, Ruins from the Future. Known as Sansi Pod City, these strange-looking homes constitute UFO City in Taiwan. Constructed in the late 1970s, they were intended to be a holiday resort with a futuristic theme. But a series of strange accidents and suicides occurred during construction, and that led to the buildings being abandoned in 1980. Some locals claimed that the misfortunes were due to the location being haunted by ghosts. The area below the odd pods had once been used as a burial site for Dutch soldiers. Number 10, Bannerman's Castle. New York and castles are not necessarily synonymous, but located on a small island in New York's Hudson River, there is indeed a castle, or at least the ruins of one. In fact, it was used as an arsenal and munitions warehouse, with construction starting in the early 20th century. The man who had it built died in 1918, and construction was halted. In 1920, part of the complex was destroyed when around 200 pounds or 91 kilograms of powder and shells exploded in a nearby structure. Now the castle belongs to the state of New York, and the entire island is off limits to the public. Number 9, Enter If You Dare. We're not sure about the exact location of this one, but the picture was included because the abandoned structure resembles a face hiding just behind the trees, and its eyes seem to look in your direction. You might get the feeling that the structure is staring straight at you, and daring you to approach and enter. Would you take the dare? Number 8, Kolmanskop. The Namib Desert in southern Africa stretches for more than 2,000 kilometers or 1,200 miles and is nearly uninhabited by humans. But there was once a small city there named Kolmanskop. It was founded in the 1900s and was populated by German workers who arrived to make their fortune in the local diamond mines. But by the mid-1950s, richer deposits of diamonds had been located and the workers moved on. After being abandoned, many of the city's buildings and houses were buried knee-deep in sand. The strange contrast of traditional German architecture and harsh desert environment made for a creepy study in desolation. It has also made the site a popular destination for both tourists and professional photographers. Number 7. Villa di Vecchi. Lake Como is the third largest lake found in Italy. It's been a popular getaway for the rich and famous since Roman times, and remains a major tourist attraction. But this particular home might be off the beaten track for some visitors. High in the mountains east of the lake lies hidden a strange and forbidding Baroque villa. According to sources, Count Felix de Vecchi commissioned the villa sometime between the mid-1800s and the early 20th century. After the Count and his family moved in, tragedy struck. The nobleman's wife was murdered and his daughter went missing. The events led the Count to take his own life, and the property fell into disrepair. From what we can tell, the villa is still there and remains abandoned, unless you count the ghost, which is said to haunt the place. Number 6. Polish Palace. Built in 1910, this palace was originally built for and used by Polish royalty. But as the 20th century progressed, the location was transformed by the communists. Under their rule, kings and queens saw their palace turned into an agricultural school and a home for the mentally challenged. After the Soviet Union fell, the location was completely abandoned. Now it simply appears like an overgrown royal palace somewhere in the deep woods of Poland. Number 5. The Last House on Holland Island. The title pretty well sums this one up, but here's some background for you. Holland Island was once located in the Chesapeake Bay of Maryland in the US. Settlers who arrived there as early as 1600 were primarily fishers and farmers. By the early 20th century, the island community comprised about 70 homes and other buildings, along with a population of around 360 people. But the land was quickly eroding, and the last inhabitants abandoned the island by 1922. The buildings continued to decay until the final structure, built in 1888, finally collapsed in 2010. Since then, the island itself has been submerged. Number 4. Leap Castle. While your home can be your castle, here's one you might not want to call home sweet home. Leap Castle in Ireland is known for having a macabre history, to say the least. In the 16th century, family members savagely attacked one another in a bloody slaughter. The deaths could account for many sightings of ghosts reported there. In particular, there's a ghost referred to as It, although this one is not a deadly clown. This particular It is said to have a decaying face and is about the size of a sheep. That's still pretty weird. Likewise, some other notable apparitions linked to the castle, which include the Elemental and the Red Lady who carries a dagger. Did you know that this place is recognized as one of the world's most haunted castles? Number 3. Twisted Houses. First, here's a little history lesson. In the year 1900, a meteorological nightmare called the Great Galveston Hurricane descended on that coastal city in Texas. And it's been called the deadliest natural disaster in the history of the US. Winds reaching 145 miles per hour or 235 kilometers per hour were responsible for upwards of 12,000 fatalities, according to some estimates. Out of a total population of 38,000, about 30,000 residents were left homeless. And you can see why in many pictures from that time. One structure in particular was identified as the only house remaining near the beach for miles. Other pictures display homes like the Twisted House, which seems to defy gravity. In many cases, the high winds seem to warp the very structure of the homes, giving them a surreal, warped appearance. Aren't you glad you weren't around for that? Number 2. Dome Sweet Dome. This one almost looks like it could be a movie set, but the dome-shaped abode was constructed in the real world by a businessman named Bob Lee. He wanted to build a vacation home in Cape Romano, Florida, for himself and his family. Finally constructed in 1980, it was ultimately abandoned in 1992 when Hurricane Andrew rendered the home uninhabitable. It's still a creepy looking curiosity though, and sitting some 180 feet 55 meters offshore with no docking or landing facilities, it's an isolated one as well. Number 1. Scary typecasting. A few segments back, we mentioned the Psycho House, and while it is an iconic creepy house, it was still created specifically for the movies. But this place really does exist somewhere in the deep, scary woods. If there was a casting call for creepy abandoned houses, this one might just beat out Norman Bates's pad. It's not hard to imagine evil spirits, ghosts, or axe-wielding psychopaths scattered all over this location. Does it bring to mind any horror movies? Let us know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit subscribe and click that bell for notifications for our next video. Cheers!